Let's talk about how a shaman walks their path. First and foremost, a shaman gets close to animals and plants and the earth itself because a shaman understands that what makes up our material bodies is that which is from the earth. We as human beings just have a very specific spark that's a little different from other life forms on this earth. But once we realize what makes up our flesh, what makes up our body, and the ideas that make up our mind, then one can approach their path far easier. Now, a shaman doesn't really approach their spiritual path in a drastically different way than the average person. We just dive into it. It's not about being better than anyone else, it's about our commitment to it. We are committed to this path because we want to know ourselves, we want to know the universe, and we want to know the gods. Now, no matter what kind of shaman you are, Nordic, Native American, Eastern, or Mediterranean, or whichever kind of shaman you happen to be, you will try to get to know the primordial aspects of this earth. And the only way to do that is to understand the pieces of ourselves. Now, a lot of people think that the brain is something that creates and transmits consciousness. I actually think that the brain is a receiver of consciousness. We can learn to receive more consciousness, a more intense level of who we are, a more intense version of our soul. We get more information from our soul the closer we get to where our soul habitates within and in our external environment. So, as a shaman, it can be a very scary path because you're not following a path that is particular to other people's souls or other people's paths. You have to get to know yourself and your soul in ways that no one can teach you. And then you can provide a template for how others can get to know their own soul. It is all about connecting those parts that make us up. Why do we believe this or that? How can I get to know the flora and fauna on a deeper level and understand why they exist, how they relate to myself? Now, a shaman, he might, well, if we're going to use an analogy, he will walk along a path that is ill-trodden. Not many people take it because it's not laid out like a religion. It's not put forward as you have to pray this many times a day, this is how you pray, and this is to what you pray to. We try to discover the gods, the spirits, the land, and the world ourselves. We follow those paths that lead through forests that no one has walked before. And it's easier to trip. It's easier to get caught up on spiritual mistakes, like becoming too attached to a certain ritual, a certain even god or goddess, or becoming consumed by the power that a shaman can have over the plants, over the animals, over the minerals, and even over one's own mind. Because once you have power over the mind, you can direct it instead of it directing you. And that can make great change in the world. But these are occult powers. A shaman uses these powers, sure, but that is not the focus. The focus is deeper and grander connections to the grander whole. To ask how a shaman walks their path is to ask, who are you? And how long have you been you? This might seem strange, but when we look at people in society, it isn't easy to tell if people know who they are. Most of the people don't, and we don't really know the aspects per se. But we can be damn certain that they are just playing off of what has been given to them, what people have told them that they are, instead of discovering it for themselves. Now, when you disconnect from society, from humanity, and you really just go out into the forest, you start to feel the dirt between your toes and your hands. You start to feel along the trees, and you try to notice the direction of the wind, how it blows from where it's blowing, and how it will blow within the coming days. All of these things are different pieces of a fabric. You can observe insects and realize that their innate nature is not that much different from the same instincts we have. When you prick an earthworm, it flinches. It doesn't want to be harmed. Human beings don't want to be harmed. But we like to lie to ourselves a lot of the time. We like to say, oh, this isn't harming us, or I can conceive of the way I'm doing things as working out in the end. An earthworm doesn't do that. An earthworm flinches when it is poked, but when we direct our lives and ourselves in certain ways, we don't always flinch when we're poked because we think that, okay, maybe I won't be poked again. Maybe if I keep on using this drug, maybe if I keep on pursuing this relationship, maybe if I keep on doing this spiritual practice, even if it's hurting me, perhaps it'll lead somewhere. Sometimes it does. But I like the idea, and I've seen it, that animals, bugs, and plants know when they're being harmed, and human beings can conceive of the idea that they're actually not being harmed, and this is actually what we should continue doing. Now, sometimes, it might you might go along a shamanic journey or practice a spiritual path that it's difficult in the beginning. It feels painful. It feels like you're being poked like that earthworm. But in the end, it isn't. You just have to figure out if that path is going to lead you somewhere. Is it going to lead you to greater and greater realizations of yourself and the universe, and your place in the universe, your connection to it? For shamans, it's all about connection and understanding. Power is usually secondary. Power is only gathered and used for utilitarian purposes on our spiritual path. It is not attached to. Now, as an individual who is schizophrenic, as I've told you all before, somebody like me hundreds of years ago in a Native American tribe might have been viewed as a shaman. I have a heightened sensitivity to everything. If I don't take my medication, everything is 2 to 3 times brighter, louder. My sense of touch is 2 to 3 times more intense. My brain works faster, much faster, 2 to 3 times once again. And this is a very conservative estimate. But, some of us are not quite ready to take on that role. I'm not quite ready to expose myself to that extreme sensory data that I had little luck with in the past. So this is one of my failings as a shaman. But it need not be the end of my path. Even with the limited amount of sensory data that I take in, the average amount of sensory data, I've been able to connect in amazing ways, to know the gods and goddesses, to know myself in ways that I never thought possible, that nobody could even tell me was possible 10 years ago. Sit down with yourself in the forest and feel how you are connected to those things. Offer to the land, and imagine that you are also offering to yourself, because the land is a part of us. We are made of this earth. And then that little spark we receive from somewhere else, that little special spark that makes us human, it becomes more relevant and clearer when we start to really get down into the earth and feel what our bodies are made out of and the difference between the material and the soul. It isn't easy. It's very difficult. But we slowly start to unravel why we're on the path we're on, the lives that we've lived, and the lessons that the universe is trying to teach us, that this earth is trying to teach us. Listen to the lessons. How a shaman walks their path? Courageously and carefully, lovingly and determined, peacefully, yet willing to war if necessary. Thank you very much for listening, and hope all of you find yourselves and have a great day.